pescar ma agus fáilte cúna chuine seo ganna chúla ha gá láte an na seomar de chúla agus trá Microsoft Teams. Agus mas táise sin ha sin dolí gal gan BBC chláraigh táiseo cúna coniu agus an ósin fuide sin táiseo ceart. Tapala Shalan. Fuide sin níos chuniu háiseog agus mas táise sin fónig mé ganna chónaice nus mórstan tráracha le Bacaloni.
Lord our God, we thank you once again for this opportunity to come before you. You are a sovereign God, the one who knows us intimately and personally. You know our every move and our every being, our every thought, our every action. And we are accountable to you for all these thoughts, all these actions, Lord. But we thank you, Lord, for this opportunity at this time. And as we gather together as a council on such an important day for this island of ours, and we set our budgets this day. We thank you, Lord, for all the work that has been done by officers, by members, everyone that contributed. And we pray, Lord, that all would be done in thine own wisdom, and that the wisdom would come from above, that we would not lean to our own understanding. For we know that if we lean to our own understanding, it leads to folly. So teach us then, Lord, to be diligent, to honour you, to know you, to walk with you. For you are the one to whom we are accountable at all times. Bless us, Lord, as a Comhairle, as we said, from the Chief Executive, all the Chief Officers, all the officers and all the members. We remember the press who are present with us just now, members of the public who may be with us and listening in. You know each one of us, Lord. So let us put our thoughts and our affections for a little time to the things that are above, the things that concern our eternal destination and our souls. For we know that here we have no continuing city. But Lord, we pray that we would grow in faith and confidence, that we would know what it is to walk with Christ, that Christ died for sinners such as we are, and we all sin daily in thought, word, and action. We remember the many who are less fortunate than we are at this time, Lord, those who are sick and suffering. We remember our colleague, Councillor Crichton, at this time as he recovers from surgery. Restore him to health, Lord, and to strength. We remember maybe those who are anxious for their health. Your word tells us not to be anxious about anything, but to put our trust and confidence in God. We ask, Lord, that you would be with us now in the deliberations that we are about to have. We pray for the convener and the leader and all who participate this day, Lord, and that all will be done for the benefit of our community which we represent. And we thank you, Lord, for that it is a privilege to be able to represent our communities at such a time. Go before us now and pardon us freely for many sins. Amen.
Tapalaise chónaice nus mórstan agus a chuniu níos go chláraigh agus bearíting lárach líon na Comhairle in na coniu. Táisi mí choniu is a gálig ach an nósin na hóisi sin na bríne na budgetin agus na glósatin hic mí gan na bheola ha tornas as lentingus a bheola mas bí öbrich merach sa mí is an natar hangoch atar gálig agus bheola na hic go univas man is tachart spaim goim. Ha mi riola cúsparan ga agus a trí mar níchen éigen noch, gus nid biachach in a cúsin bron nach choniu gan a Comhairle. Agus iori minis Derek Mackay manager riolochi agus taien in láharach gelevig. Derek.
Nach Gorum.
Anna Shaw.
Leader. Deputy leader. Bala agus Vathersay, Kenneth J. McLean,
I'm sure.
Ian Archie McNeil, Usha Jess, Ediske agus Benavilia, Ian M. MacLeod, Susan Thompson, Susan Thompson, Ushta Tua, Mustafa Hussein, Ushan Robertson, Naherach Paul Finnegan, Kenneth M. MacLeod, Skiernan Loch, Robert Mackenzie, Angus Morrison, Skirug agus Carlebach, Ranald Fraser, Norman MacDonald, Tiv Shear agus Nish, John Norman MacLeod,
And here,
Donald McSween, Lochatua, of apologies from Councillor Donald F. Crichton, John A. McKeever, Colin McLean, Jordan Vicatua, Ian M. Macaulay, Malcolm K. MacDonald, Gordon Murray, Jordan Vicajace, Ray Mackenzie, Angus McCormack, Dr. Francis Murray, George Murray, and Skidden Rue, Noddy MacDonald, and Finlay Stewart. I think Susan's, I think Councillor Thompson is now here.
Councillor Thompson, are you hearing us in the chamber?
Someone else online to speak.
Can someone who's online speak so we know you're hearing us loud and clear, please?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay,
I
thank
can
you.
hear you, Kenny, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Kenneth and John Norman.
Councillor Thompson.
So, Councillor Thompson,
Can you hear me now, convener?
yes,
Yeah,
we can
yes.
hear you now. So,
Thank you.
okay,
Convener, that's 28 members of the Comhairle present.
okay, that belows Derek. Had Guri the bail, me klaar aan de kusper se me hebben klaar op reis. Agus bega femol na niesig bail na huberake aan de wie klaar wel baul se me dan gewoon de klaar zo'n kunnen aan de kusper na tjene naar de nu dingen zijn homer na Eloine. En je kollas ankel dingen klaar kleef aan me ha. Ik zie go kusper ga even klaar oproch. Agus sin eis gen cogúni na comedían, agus comedy contal, agus bun structure na córa a chai chamal iniu yn hógi la figit gan iarain, ag figit minach na iau dahreig, agus yn cariche, John Robertson.
A mi glywys yd gyfwn comedy call agus spunstructor yr son diamars gogylwaid I chytian iaran 2000 agus co-carry.
Ta belaisje, John le paik, bo.
I'm happy to second it, Chair.
Okay, taik van een jaar, nach karoch comedy control of swim structure Susan, moeilijke Susan die komas. Ik ben isje, gaan viola, ska scoshing dol, gaan eisken comedy policy stores, ga gamelijk 3 uur de nu, agus kujoch ha gloset en nakin. So I will now going to speak in English, and item number 3 on the agenda is the report of the meeting of the Policy and Resources Committee of today, 25th of February at 3 p.m. This report of the meeting of the Policy and Resources Committee at 3 p.m. has been uploaded to SharePoint. I will now ask the leader, Councillor Paul Steele, to present to us the 2025-26 budget as proposed by the Policy and Resources Committee. Leader.
Thank you very much, Convener.
This is the third budget of this term of the Comhairle, and therefore my third as leader. And while it does not become much easier, we can at least say that this year has seen an increase in our revenue budget. This is the first time that I've been able to make that observation this term. Before we go further, I would like to acknowledge the hard work of the Budget and Strategy Board, representing all wards and political groups in considering and ultimately approving the recommendations which are now before us in the budget book. That process began in mid-2024 and has been a thoughtful and considered process, working through seminars, the Budget and Strategy Board, Policy and Resources Committee, and of course all members in this council chamber. We shouldn't underestimate the fact that we have reached this point, and the only amendments being considered are related to £22,000 to put street lighting on for an extra hour and the level at which we set our council tax. I think councils across the country, even those with majority administrations, would be envious of the collegiate way in which we are carrying out our duties, and that is to all our credit. I would also like to thank the corporate management team, and particularly the finance team, who have prepared all the supporting documents within the budget folder. My thanks also to the Chief Executive Malcolm and the Chief Financial Officer Norman for providing the relevant information, sound advice and guidance throughout the process of producing a balanced and lawful budget, which once again provides adequate funding for the services on which our communities depend, and which allow us to continue to support our communities, deliver our political commitments and aspirations, and which provide the best ever level of Crown Estate funding allocations for community distribution. This budget is the first to come before the Comhairle in my time as leader, which implements an increase in the funding provided through the settlement. After many years of reduced or so-called flat cash settlements, unfortunately, the benefits of that increased sum of £1.34 million are largely offset by the effects of the increases in employers' national insurance contributions. We have been reimbursed for around 60% of these increases, but that still leaves us to find around £1 million, attributed 75%, 25% between the Comhairle and the IJB. Despite the increases in the settlement, this remains a time of significant pressures on both revenue and capital budgets, and it has to be remembered that the Comhairle, along with other councils, is still recovering from the effects of the so-called flat cash settlements and from previous council tax freezes. The world economy remains very volatile, with many costs continuing to increase beyond the level of UK inflation, with perhaps even less international security than in previous years. It is impossible to predict the costs and availability of commodities, construction and other essential materials, and that is one of the reasons why we have once again recommended retention of £3.5 million of uncommitted balances, about 3% of our total revenue budget. Of course, it is not only the public sector and government which faces the effects of these costs. The term cost of living crisis has now been in our vocabulary for many years, and whether it is a crisis or more truthfully a semi-permanent increase in living costs is hardly relevant. The question for the Comhairle is, what can we continue to do to support our communities? First and foremost, we protect our communities by protecting frontline services as much as possible, and that is best done with continuing a prudent, measured approach to the realities of the financial situation, and by continuing to employ the necessary number of employees to deliver these services. That is a continuing pressure, as you are all aware, and the Chief Executive has commented on many occasions in terms of both reviews of the organisational structure and employee numbers generally, that we have reached the stage of thus far and no more, if we wish to maintain vital frontline services to the public and also to deliver our policies, strategies and political aspirations. We should always remember that among our main tasks as a local authority is to support delivery of these policies and services to our employees, and our employees who deliver them, and providing scrutiny through our audit and reporting mechanisms, but not to waste our time and officers looking back fruitlessly at decisions already taken and analysing previous decisions with no real outcome in mind. Again, I don't think I need to remind you all that despite the increase in our budget, this term of the Comhairle has overall seen a process of retrenchment and service reduction which has left many services stretched. I am, though, once again very pleased that we are able to do as much to support people as best we can. Our Cost of Living Support Fund was opened last week to applications, and we have again been able to allocate the sum of £250,000 to support community groups and organisations, mainly in the third sector, to support individuals and communities throughout the Western Isles. On Crown Estate funding, I'm sure I'm not the only member who is surprised to see not just maintenance of last year's level of support for community-based activities, but to see an increase of £94,000 to £94,000 per ward for what we have now called rightly the Coastal Communities Fund. I'm really pleased to see the balance and equity in our distribution of Crown Estate funding among wards and communities, on our strategic projects and, let's be honest, supporting key but non-statutory service provision, such as the evening bus service, community transport, our heritage service and athletes travel. Finally, before I turn to the budget itself, I would like to note one sign of significant change and one regret about lack of progress. To take the negative first, once again the Barra and Battersea Community Campus, or should I say the education and leisure elements which remain of it, and which remains our #1 capital project, remain just that, a project. Everything that has been asked of this corner to deliver the original concept of the Barra and Battersea Community Campus, and now the reduced element comprising a new school and associated leisure provision, has been done. But unfortunately, I cannot say the same about every other partner to the BVCC. We are now at a stage of finalising the design option for the school, and I call for and fully expect a positive response from Scottish Government to make up whatever difference there is in terms of a funding shortfall for at least the education and leisure facilities for which the Barra and Battersea community has waited for far too long. Much more positively, I can say at last that in the field of public service reform, our support for the single island authority model is moving through the system as it should. I commend the leadership shown by the Minister for Public Finance, Ivan McKee, MSP, who has at last implemented what the Comhairle has been advocating for so long, in bringing NHS Scotland and other Scottish Government bodies to the table with a clear requirement of progress and effort to establish a programme of work which now show every sign of being appropriately resourced to a conclusion within a timescale. A recent letter from the Minister noted that he wished the Western Isles to continue to be at the vanguard of public service reform, and I think we should commend this Chamber and our officers for the national leadership they have shown in developing this essential work as regards community empowerment and democratic accountability, as well as financial sustainability to the stage which it has now reached. It does not guarantee, of course, that there will not be bumps in the road, but at last public service reform in the Western Isles is moving at pace. But my primary duty today is to present to you a balanced budget. While I'm delighted to say that the recommendations before you do exactly that, it has once again been a considerable challenge. The draft budget before you represents our best efforts to manage our scarce resources in a way which continues to deliver the services on which our communities depend, and which, remarkably, still provides sufficient capacity for the Comhairle to take forward its own political strategy, policies, community leadership for the Western Isles, and our all-important work on public service reform, renewable energy development, community empowerment, apprenticeships, community and social development, and all the other equally important areas which we support, both from our own funds and by wise use of external funding. I believe that for the remainder of our term, we need to focus even more on key areas, and I look forward to talking about these through the Budget and Strategy Board and in this chamber in the months to come. In my view, and I hope that you'll bring your own thoughts to this process, our focus should be on our renewable energy dividend, housing opportunities and innovation, Gaelic, particularly in education and training, family-friendly support, recognising the need for increased childcare provision to support families and support economic activity, connectivity enhancement, and climate-resilient infrastructure. Our officers have prepared this budget on a realistic basis, reflecting that the pressures of pay increases and inflation may require revision of the budget within the course of the financial year. It should be noted that even between this budget report being produced and now, the figures have changed, specifically in relation to the amount we are receiving for employers' national insurance contributions. We also noted earlier the volatility of the Scottish, UK and world economy, and in these times and with these pressures, I cannot emphasise enough the need for us to preserve a workable level of reserves as an essential element of a responsible budget strategy. To this volatility, I have to state again the anticipated deficit in the IJB budget in 26-27 and in future years. That budget is IJB's responsibility as a legal entity, but the Comhairle has to assess the IJB deficit, until now supported by reserves and vacancy savings, as one of its own risks as a parent body. I once again urge the IJB to address its financial position urgently. Coming back to the Comhairle budget, it is crystal clear that even with a modest increase in unallocated spend, without our policy of retention of a reasonable level of reserves, we would have been looking at damaging cuts to our services and potentially a very high increase in council tax. This budget recommends use of £2 million of the £4 million available balances, leaving £2 million to assist us with budgets in 26-27 and beyond. This is a policy which we have followed successfully over many years, and I once again commend it to you. Can I also commend the sterling work of the corporate management team, which identified yet another £1.3 million of savings. These were not easy or neutral savings, and it is significant that we have sought to mitigate their effect by use of 287,000 of Crown Estate funding. How much better it would have been were we able to use that Crown Estate funding, the interest from loans that we have made, and the island's cost of living fund to allocate to strategic projects to add to much needed capital projects. In fact, to take forward more of our aspirations for the Western Isles. But instead, we have no option but to include these elements in our budget planning. I once again reiterate, in case that is seen as some kind of defeat, that if we believe, as I think we should, that our job is to support and sustain the people of the Western Isles, maintaining our services and the capacity to run them should always be among our highest policy priorities. I suppose that it is now time to speak about council tax. None of us wish to raise taxes, but neither do we wish to cut our services. Last year's proposed council tax increase of 5%, which was subsequently funded by the Scottish Government, was at that time around half the rate of inflation. And I think that we recognised that above inflation increases were highly likely to be required in future years. That is indeed the case, and it is the case in every council chamber across Scotland. Our proposed council tax increase of 8% is less than many and represents an appropriate and proportionate element of our balanced budget, recognising the need to maintain our services and operations while not imposing disproportionate tax burdens on our residents. Capital funding is 5.8 million, comparable to last year after specific funding for free school meal expansion is excluded, and once again does not represent an adequate sum even to maintain the assets we have. We have an amendment in front of us today proposing an increase in council tax of 3% with the effect of a reduction of £675,000 in our available balances for next year. These reserves would then be reduced to £1.3 million, not nearly enough in our chief officers and my own opinion. Can I remind you that we have had to use our reserves to support each budget in recent years? Also, any proposal to reduce income from council tax will ultimately restrict the council's ability to maintain services to help those most in need, and the amendment, in my view, will actually do more harm than good to the very people it suggests it's helping. Full council tax reduction is available to those unable to pay council tax, but let us be in no doubt, it is by this council retaining some flexibility to do good with what little uncommitted monies we have, which makes all the difference. We all know of real examples of discretionary services which are not otherwise funded and which help people directly and practically, but if reserves are diminished or used up and there's no capacity within the budget, no service can be provided. In conclusion, I am once again pleased to place before you and to recommend your approval of a balanced budget based on realistic and prudent financial planning, which balances use of reserves, external funding, council tax, and sadly service reductions, but which will sustain Comhairle nan Eilean Siar and with it the communities of the Western Isles for a further year. It is the product of hard work by Budget and Strategy Board members and our officers, and I commend it to you.
Thank you very much, Leader, for presenting the budget for 2025-2026. Can I now have a seconder for the Leader's budget?
I second.
Seconded by the Deputy Leader, Councillor Duncan McInnes. And there are 3 amendments which have been circulated to all members. I don't know if the members online have been given a copy of the amendments they have. The first amendment is proposed by Councillor Angus McCormack and seconded by Councillor Malcolm MacDonald. I will now invite Councillor McCormack to present his amendment. Angus.
Thank you, Convener. I move that the Comhairle agree to reinstate the 11 p.m. switch-off time for rural street lights to be funded through the roads maintenance budget at a cost of £22,000.
Thank you very much, Councillor McCormack, with support from Councillor Malcolm MacDonald. Seconded by Councillor Malcolm MacDonald. Leader and Deputy Leader, are you both accepting this amendment? So the Leader and the Deputy Leader are accepting this amendment. Thank you very much. The second amendment. Sorry, Councillor Colin McLean, yes, come in.
One of the most, I should say, in the public feedback summary, we noticed that roads maintenance is among one of the highest that the public want. And I know it is well-meaning by the two councillors who have put this forward to change the street lights from 10 o'clock till 11. But in all my time as councillor, both now and the last, I've never had that. But I've had plenty of people saying that they want the roads maintenance kept, the budget kept. And that's one of the most important, that's one of the most, my emails, if any, are full of the roads maintenance. And really, and one of the things I'm disappointed at is that this has actually come up and that it pinpoints 22,000 taken out of the roads maintenance budget. And you ask any of the officers who are responsible for roads maintenance, and they will say they can't possibly even do what they're doing. And here we are, we spent months going through on the budget setting, budget strategy board or whatever, and this was never taken up at that time. And now we just come out and we pass it through. So I'm sorry, but as one, I find I don't go along with that recommendation. But I'm just saying that as a councillor who represents many people who are getting on to me about the state of the roads.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor McLean. Any other members want to speak about this proposed amendment? I mean, it has been accepted by the leader and the deputy leader, so to the council, accepted. Councillor Ray McKenzie.
Yeah, I understand what Councillor McLean is on about, but I think in this case, I think the next one actually referred to the roads revenue budget, and this one is through the roads maintenance budget. I don't know if that makes any difference to Councillor McLean.
My understanding, it's the same budget.
It's the same budget, Councillor McKenzie. Okay, so does the council members, do you agree the recommendation? Do you agree the amendment? Was the leader and the deputy leader supporting it? Everyone else agree with it? It's okay. Thank you very much. The second amendment is proposed by Councillor Francis Murray, and I'm seconding it. And can I ask Councillor Murray to present her amendment? Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Convener. The Coroner agrees to increase council tax by 7.5% to be funded from the additional general revenue grant announced by Shona Robertson, Cabinet Secretary for Finance and Local Government, to assist councils in meeting the extra costs associated with a rise in employers' national insurance contributions brought in by the Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Murray. Leader and Deputy Leader, are you accepting this amendment?
Thank you, Convener. Can I just get clarification on, obviously the second part of the amendment is similar to the one that we just agreed. That shouldn't affect it, should it?
No. That was withdrawn. The second amendment was the same as Councillor McCormack's and Councillor MacDonald, so that's been withdrawn.
Okay, so as mentioned in my speech, figures have changed even since the budget report was produced. And we rightly highlighted this, and members had an opportunity to make amendments to the budget. Councillor Murray has been actively involved in the process and has put forward this amendment, which suggests raising council tax by 7.5% instead of 8% within the small financial envelope that we had. So to me, that is reasonable, and one proposal I expected to come from this chamber following that discussion, so I'm willing to accept that amendment.
Thank you very much, Leader.
And I accepted it.
And support from the Deputy Leader. Does anyone want to come in on this? Councillor Colm McLean.
Just repeating what I said before, because it has this attached to it. Again, we're into the roads budget.
No, that one's been withdrawn. Yes. Okay. Councillor Mustafa Hussain.
Yeah, thanks very much. Just like, I mean, I know we're in a tight situation financially, but I think we need to understand and remember the increases in cost of living for our communities. You know, so most people are suffering increases in rent, increases in higher cost of energy, and difference. I would have liked maybe the proposal to have gone a bit better to at least about 7%. But considering the situation we are, I would accept what the leader have suggested. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Hussain. Does any other member want to say anything? Councillor Ian Archie McNeill.
Thank you, Chair. Just a wee point of clarification. When it said street lighting hours in rural areas.
Councillor McNeill, we've already moved on from that.
Yes, but it's it's the rural areas bit of that. I just wanted the clarification on what was meant by the rural areas. You know, for example, Castleby is that classified as a rural area?
Well,
that's
I'm guessing that it means everywhere.
Okay, well.
Okay. Councillor Francis Murray.
Thank you very much, Convener, and I'd like to thank the Leader and the Deputy Leader for accepting the amendment as it has now been amended, and it's just that first one bit. And I would agree with Councillor Hussain that it would be great to be in a position to suggest an even lower figure, but we also have to be realistic. And when we look around the country at some of the rates being set elsewhere, 7.5% does compare favourably. However, I would like to urge, and the Leader mentioned it himself, that we continue to offer as much support as possible to those in need in our communities and commend the continued work of the Islands Cost Crisis Emergency Fund in alleviating hardship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Murray. So, do the Chamber accept this amendment? Okay, thank you very much. And the final amendment, or the third amendment, is proposed by Councillor Gordon Murray, seconded by Councillor Ray Mackenzie, and I'll now invite Councillor Gordon Murray to present this amendment. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Convener. The Comhairle are recognising the real hardship being faced by many members of our communities who work hard to strive for their families, to have a warm home and decent, wholesome food on the table, wishes to support them, and for that reason will limit the increase in the council tax for 2025-26 to 3%, to be funded from uncommitted reserves, and that the Comhairle further welcomes the significant increased financial support to Scottish local authorities by the Scottish Government for the forthcoming financial year.
Thank you very much, Councillor Murray. Your amendment's been seconded by Councillor Ray Mackenzie. I'll now ask the Leader and the Deputy Leader, are you accepting this amendment?
Unfortunately, for the reasons I set out in my budget, I won't be accepting this amendment.
Thank you, Leader.
I second that.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor McInnes. So we can now go to either a debate or roll call. If we go for a roll call, I'll allow the proposer and seconder to speak. But if we go straight to if people want to go to debate, we'll go to debate, obviously. Do people want to go to debate or a roll call about this? Chief Executive.
I think if the proposer of either motion or amendment wishes the matter to be debated, then that is the best course.
All right, so we have to debate it. Okay, so the order of debate is the mover of the motion, then the mover of the amendment, the seconder of the motion, the seconder of the amendment, and any other member of the Comhairle can take part in the debate. So the mover of the motion is first, the Leader.
Thank you, Convener. Having just agreed with the amendment to raise council tax by 7.5%, I feel I need to highlight that we have the second lowest rate of council tax in Scotland. And based on informal feedback, we will have the second or possibly third lowest percentage to council tax rise in Scotland this year. Shetland, I believe, went for 10% rise, and Orkney went for 15%. So next year, I think we will need to seriously consider our approach to council tax, and I feel we need to aim to get to the national average to help us close the deficit. So I think reducing it to 3% at this time is not a sensible way forward. So I will say no more than that at this stage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Leader. Can I now ask the mover of the amendment, Councillor Gordon-Murray, to speak?
Thank you, Convener. And firstly, I would like to thank Councillor Francis Murray, Leader of the SNP Group, and yourself, Convener, for managing at this point anyway to reduce the council tax to 7.5% after the council administration had announced 10% rise at the start of the process. This amendment is to ask the council to reduce the rise even more and raise it by 3%. In the run-up to the budget setting meeting, I was getting a lot of representations from the public, very concerned about the consequences for them and their families if there was a significant council tax rise. One said to me, "The cost of living is high and continuing to rise. Living in a climate where heating is required for most of the year is an added struggle for islanders." Another one said, "I'm not sure if anyone has noticed, the food prices keep creeping up, so we are all forced to pay more because there are simply no options." A young mother stated to me, "Things that should be pennies or free are charged at a premium, like offal and bones. We use bones for broth as a staple, and we have to pay for them when they used to be free because they were mostly getting thrown away." She continued, "The point I'm trying to make is that creeping prices of food and electricity are not helping anyone who earns a minimum wage. We don't qualify for benefits. Many people fall through the net, and this means we have a very tight budget. My children cry because we don't go to the mainland like their pals or to the cinema. I don't think we have been to a restaurant in 7 years. So any raise in council tax takes a toll, a big one. I am well aware of many families in similar or worse situations than ours." And she made a request to me. She says, "I hope my opinion is shared, even though it will not be popular amongst those people who don't suffer financial difficulties." Another said to me, "Child poverty is at an all-time high and food banks are the order of the day." Someone else, "Fear and anxiety felt by many as costs and bills continue to rise while incomes don't. And we know that we are still in a cost of living crisis. HHP rents have gone up, and Ofgem this today have just announced the increase in the energy cap. So energy bills will increase. Food prices are as stated by the member of the public, are creeping up and predicted to rise even more. The financial burden is unbearable for many families, many households, and this has so many dire consequences, especially on our future, our children." On the Step Change website, a debt charity, they list the impact debt in a family has on children. And they mention bullying. Children and families with problem debt are more than twice as likely to be unhappy at school and be bullied because they don't have the same things as their friends. There's worry. More than half of the children, 58% in families with problem debt, say they worry about their family's financial position. The family is affected. Half of the children in families with problem debt, 47%, say it causes arguments in the family. And going without, 9 out of 10 families in problem debt say that they have to cut back on essentials like food, clothing and heating for their children in order to keep up repayments. And debt or falling into debt is a worry, as warned by the Citizens Advice Scotland. And you'll know this more than me, Convener. A Citizens Advice spokesperson stated with regards to council tax rises, "We are very concerned at the impact these rises will have on people already struggling with the cost of living." They go on, "Council tax debt is the single biggest debt the Scottish Citizens Advice Bureau network deals with each year. And our fear is these rises could further increase numbers of people falling into debt or falling further into debt. And that's the citizens' advice. So basically, I'd ask you to support a 3% council tax rise and show support to the low-income households whom we represent. And I'm more than happy to give their voice in the chamber today. So I ask you to support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Murray. I'll now ask the seconder of the motion to say.
Thanks, Convener. Just seconding the leader, we as a Comhairle have seen that we've done very prudent management of resources over many, many years. And we always get this kind of motion or amendment for us to use reserves that we must protect. And clearly, when we look at the Western Isles, as the leader did say, was the second lowest council tax in Scotland, and other local authorities, particularly in island groupings, have seen from 10 to 15% increase. And when we look at the type of housing we do have in the Western Isles, 90% of them are in in banding D and below, and that the average increase that our increase in council tax will be less than 24 pence a day. So the Comhairle is very much leading with the Community Planning Partnership and the Anti-Poverty Crew that's chaired by Angus McCormick, and has done excellent work to look after those that are in real poverty. And the Comhairle has played a significant part in going forward for those that are suffering. And the prudent management of our reserves, and we must keep the 3.5 million in reserves. The only representation that the leader and I have had was an email from one of those living in Stornoway North, and the response there was very, very balanced and a pragmatic approach. And the person did not want to see an increase in council tax, which most of us, if not all of us, do, but he understood the need for keeping reserves for a rainy day. And particularly, we've seen that with a cyber attack and having money in reserves. And when we look at our Comhairle, we have to look after the Comhairle's finances. Scottish Water have this year increased by 9.9%, which is nothing of our doing. We collected on their behalf. So a lot of people don't understand when they get their full council tax that includes water rates as well. And last year they increased by 5% when the Comhairle did not increase at all. So moving forward, as a Comhairle, we've had real terms cut in budget of 18% since 2013 to 14, and the next lowest local authority was -2, and that's Comhairle nan Eilean that are similar kind of state and kind of economic needs as we do. So with all those, I would certainly support continuing at the 7% in increase in council tax, and that's a balanced and pragmatic approach that is taken and that the Comhairle should take forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you very much, Councillor McInnes. So I'll now ask the seconder of the amendment, Councillor Ray Mackenzie, to speak. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you. I thought we had another decrease there for a moment. Yes, the leader and the chief executive did announce that the council tax would need to be 10% earlier. So obviously, we're very welcome. We welcome the efforts of Councillor Francis and the convener to move a reduction of and succeed a reduction of 2.5 with their amendment. However, we don't feel that this goes far enough, and inflation is running at approximately 3%. The Chancellor, Labour Chancellor Rachel Reeves, has increased national insurance by 4%, And it is good that we hear today that the Scottish Government is able to provide 60% of that. There's still another 40%. So this 7%, this is 7% before we start, which the community has to bear. On top of this 4%, the Chancellor has withdrawn the winter fuel support, kept the 2-child cap, refused the WASPI women's pensions, and apparently there's 2,000 women affected here. All of this in addition to huge food costs and energy costs, which even today we're hearing the price cap is rising by 6.4%. We all want to achieve the best solution under these shocking conditions. I believe what people have said to me, and we've all had people talking to them one way or another, that the figure of inflation, i.e. 3%, would just about be acceptable and understandable. The difference between the amendments is approximately 580,000, and that's against the 7.5, respectively. So, on the other hand, over many years, the Council has kept reserves of £3 million. Recently, it changed to 3.5 million. With budget challenges, we should be using a larger amount of uncommitted money. On the other hand, if in addition, with balances and underspends, there is an additional 2 million on top of that 3.5, making it over 5 million in total. What this amendment actually means is that we use 10% of our total reserves, contingencies, underspends, balances of over 5 million to reduce the 7.5 to 3%. This is also works out at 0.6 of our total budget, 0.6. At this time of a perfect storm, when all these costs have come together to make life so difficult for our community, I feel this is a time to use a fraction of the money put by in these extreme times to mitigate the council tax burden for this year. There are potentially, as has been said by the leader, great prospects through developments in future years. However, the community is facing a huge financial burden now. Now is the time to support them, not to add to the burden.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mackenzie. Does any other member of the Comhairle want to say anything in this debate? No? Okay, so we now have the right of reply of the mover of the amendment, the right of reply of the mover of the motion. So first of all, be Councillor Murray, right of reply as the mover of the amendment. Councillor Murray.
Thanks, Convener. What can I say? Just to sum up, I think we've been blessed with great natural resources in the islands. We've got great staff here. And the way that the budget's been presented is that we're predicating on failure, that we will fail to use our vast natural resources and our human resources, and that we will be still facing the same deficit this next year, the same questions. I've been through, I don't know how many budgets, and we're just doing the same thing all the time. We need to be looking at income generation. And now there are encouraging signs. I've seen the transformational projects. Also, what's been mentioned as a medium financial strategy, which is great. I had expected it to be part of the budget, which I thought was agreed, but it's good that it's coming at some point. Personally, I stood on a manifesto that said to use all funds when balances exceed 2% to ensure zero or lower council tax. And that manifesto is very important to me. But I think this amendment shows that we are optimistic that we can reduce the deficit. But let's not financially burden our people at this time, at this very, very difficult time. And I would urge members to consider and support putting the council tax at 3%. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gordon Murray, as the mover of the amendment, and I'll now ask the leader, who is the mover of the motion, to sum up, please. Leader.
Thank you very much, convener. I think we disagree on the use of reserves. I think it's not about being optimistic or pessimistic. It's about being realistic. I think you're right. We have natural resources and we're trying our hardest to make sure that's going to benefit our communities. But that's not necessarily going to happen in the next year. So the fact that we have a £2 million of reserves that we're using this year, if we don't have at least that for next year, we are not doing the job we should be doing, and that's ensuring the future of the services that we provide as a Comhairle. We're all here as councillors and as a Comhairle to represent the community. So there's no separation. We are the community as much as anyone else is. We're all here to make sure things are improved for the people that we represent, and we know they're going through hard times. As I mentioned in my speech, if we don't have the funding to provide the services that we've got, including supporting things like the cost of living fund, and all the work that's done through the inclusion officers, it's the people that we're supporting that are going to be affected. We need to be able to fund what we need to fund to support the people. We're making savings. Some of the savings we're making just now are not savings we'd want to do, but we find ourselves in the position with the funding as it is that we have to make these savings. If we keep using reserves, you can spend them once, they're gone. So the other point I was going to make was just in terms of the council tax rise, it is difficult. £2 a week is the figure at Band D, approximately. For most people, that's more than affordable. For some people on the edge, it's not. And that's why we put these other things in place to support these people, because absolutely right, the cost of living is going through the roof and it's not fair on the people of the Western Isles. So we need to do as best we can to support them through the services that we're responsible for and that we provide, but also to make sure we get as much money coming in through external funding opportunities to support these people as well. Council tax is the only way we can raise funds at the moment. I think the fact that we proposed 10% early on in our budget discussions. We've had great discussions in this chamber about what we can do. We've managed to get it down to 8% based on the other decisions we've taken, which was useful. And I think the fact we're going to 7.5% today shows we do consider, and we are very much aware of the burden that is placed on the people in our communities. But to go to 3% and to take that money from the reserves that we're going to be relying on in the next, not just next year, it's years going forward. I think it would be irresponsible of us to do that. But I appreciate the sentiment supporting the people of the Western Isles. I think that's, like I say, that's why we're all here. That's the reason that we're councillors and the reason that the officers are here to support us. So unfortunately, I won't be supporting the amendment as it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader. We'll now go and take a vote on the matter. And so it's either obviously motion in the name of the Leader, Councillor Paul Steele, and the Deputy Leader, Councillor Duncan McInnes, or if you're supporting the amendment in the name of Councillor Gordon Murray and seconded by Councillor Ray Mackenzie. So when Derek Mackay calls out your name, motion for the leaders in the name of the Leader, or the amendment in the name of Councillor Gordon Murray. And also, please use your microphone if you're indicating, are you supporting the motion or the amendment? Derek? Motion.
Leader.
Motion.
Deputy Leader. Kenneth J. McLean.
Motion.
Ian Archie McNeil. Ian M. MacLeod.
Motion.
Susan Thompson.
Motion.
Mustafa Hussain. Ushan Robertson.
Motion.
Paul Finnegan.
Motion.
Kenneth M. MacLeod.
Motion.
Robert Mackenzie.
Motion.
Angus Morrison.
Can someone put off their light, please? You can't get, that's it now.
Motion. Ranald Fraser.
Motion.
Norman MacDonald.
Motion.
John Norman MacLeod.
Motion.
Donald McSween.
Motion.
John A. McKeever.
Motion.
Colin McLean,
Motion.
Ian M. Macaulay,
Motion.
Malcolm K. MacDonald,
Motion.
Gordon Murray,
Amendment.
Ray Mackenzie,
Amendment.
Angus McCormack,
Motion.
Dr. Francis Murray,
Motion.
George Murray,
Motion.
Norrie MacDonald,
Motion.
Finlay Stewart.
Motion.
(26) for the motion, 2 for the amendment.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, that brings our Comhairle meeting to a close. Again, I want to reiterate what the leader said, to thank all the members and especially the officers, Norman and his team, and all the heads of service for their work over the past few months in very difficult circumstances, trying to achieve a balanced budget. But once again, we've achieved it. So thank you very much for your hard work. It's very much appreciated by all members. And we're very, very fortunate to have such good officers and who are guiding us as members so well during all these budget discussions. And once again, we've settled on a balanced budget for the next financial year, 25-26. So Tapalai Shula, and the next scheduled meeting of the Comhairle will be on the 7th of May, 2025. Tapalai.